Good girl! Get it! Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to our Friday edition of Reaper Squeak Tips with your host, Kiri, the squeaky face dog, and me, Anne. We are without our disembodied voice today. Good girl. We are without our disembodied voice. Hello! Dog who skipped breakfast and wouldn't eat it, but now is proceeding to be silly. Well, you were full of spit and vinegar. Get your ball. Get it. Good girl. All right. So, yes, Kiri says, squeak, 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 squeak. Crazy dog. Crazy dog. What? Just because sticky notes fall on your head doesn't mean you have to stop squeaking. And now you've messed up your blanket. Ridiculous dog. I have a ridiculous dog, just so you all know, all right? All right, so cool. Hi, everybody. You're ridiculous. Come on, lay down. Don't lay down on your other ball. I think she's done. I think the squeaks are done. We're past the squeak state. Yeah, she was waiting for me to speak. Exactly. Yeah, but lots of squeaks. So she still didn't eat her breakfast this morning, so I'm still a little concerned. But yesterday she ate well, so hopefully she seemed okay this morning. She's got like a little bit of what sounds like congestion, and I just am wondering if it's allergies, because it seems to be going back and forth, because it wasn't as bad yesterday, but this morning is a little worse, and the weather shifted, so who knows? If it keeps up, then we're calling the vet, and we'll go in and get her checked over. But, yeah, otherwise, yay, stuff! Hi, everybody, how are you feeling? Like, my boyfriend was so excited about all the election news that he got up at 4:50 a.m., and that means that I woke up at 4:50 a.m. and couldn't get back to sleep because he wasn't there for like 45 minutes. So this is annoying. So I'm kind of in that mode. I did eventually get back to sleep, but you know, when you've got that 45-minute to an hour break in the middle of the night and you wake up feeling kind of, you know, like that. That's what I am this morning. But yes, so we're a little bit sleepy perhaps, or a little bit discombobulated, but hopefully we'll be recombobulated by painting Fire Giant. I just decided it was Monster Week. Like, we've done monsters all week. We did, you know, Troll, we did Sphinx. So now I thought, since I haven't touched him for a while, I thought we'd go back and do some Fire Gianting. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it comes and goes, Val. I don't know. I'm just going to kind of watch her over the week, and over the weekend, if we have to go to the emergency vet, I'll throw the money at him. I don't care. But, I mean, she seems happy today, even though she's not eating, so I don't know. Maybe she just doesn't feel like it. Who knows? Who knows? She's a mysterious dog. Doglet mystery. Right, Kiwi? Oh, no, Coops. Yeah, you and me. We were both up at ungodly hours of the morning. I'm just like, I just kind of looked at David and I'm just like, I'm excited about the election too, honey, but not excited enough to get up before 5 a.m. He's like, but I couldn't sleep. All right. It is what it is. Okay, so we've got a couple things we could work on today, guys. We could work on the Hellhound pelt. And I could show you how I would tackle this, because it's like, has some texture, but it's also largely smooth and it's kind of weird. Hey, Balrog John, how's it going? Oh, wow, you too, Twistoma. It seems like a lot of people woke up really bloody early. I at least got back to sleep after, like, you know, carefully forcing my brain to not worry about the fact that David was not in bed. Yeah, so it's one of those days. It's one of those Fridays where we're very happy it's Friday, right? I think it's that day. So do you guys want Hellhound pelt today, or do you want me to, like, work on showing you, like, how I would tackle these big flat NMM areas, or, do you want me to do the little diamond pattern, which is actually pretty easy. I mean, it is just highlighting each individual little scale thing. But we could make it metallic. You know, we could work on any of that stuff, really. You have a preference? Because I could go anywhere. I'm easy today. I'm happy it's Friday. I have a ton of time today in the afternoon to work on my book, so it's a good day for me. And the weekend is good, so I'll have lots of time to work on my book too. And hopefully also the World Anvil. No, nobody cares? All right, well then I'm just going to work on whatever I feel like working on. I think we'll try the Hellhound pelt. You're leaning toward well, Dragon Eye. Well, let me throw some fur on the pelt because it shouldn't be too long. I used the Dungeon Dweller's colors for his beard, and I think I'm gonna go the same way with the pelt because it lets me repeat those. So that means that what I'll be doing is using some kobold scale, goblin skin, and ogre skin to kind of mix highlights for this fur here. And the base of the fur, if you'll remember, is ruddy leather. And I shaded it with a bit of walnut just to make it get some. I'm good, Pendrake. I've got sound. Check your system. Check to see if you're muted. Somebody tell Pendrake. There. Yeah, because I'm good. Like, as far as I know, everybody else seems to be hearing me, so. Okay, so first we'll get our ready leather out. You have sound? Yeah. I figured, because people were responding to what I was saying, so I knew it wasn't my system this time. Let's see here. Get a little closer, get a little closer. I'm feeling kind of whimsical today. Alright, now I don't know how much red I'm actually. The thing is that looking at this, these colors, see how close they are? And it's actually, they're quite different as far as the color goes. You can see how red the one is and how brown, orangey the other one is. But when you look at them together and you kind of squint, do you see how the colors kind of run together? What that means is that these are exactly the same shade. So they're exactly the same degree of lightness versus darkness, which means that you can't use one to highlight the other. I could create a redder cast to the fur by using this, but it's not an effective highlight. So I'm actually going to put it away, even though I did use it to shade the beard, but then the beard was primarily orange, so that worked for the beard. Let me pop it back in my happy container. And we will instead go away from the red, and we'll go with ruddy leather mixed with goblin skin to have highlights. Let me get some things in focus here. Not the sword, because if I leave the sword at all close, it's going to be the thing that is in focus. There we go. Get my glasses on, because I can't see anything without it. Hey, Rax, how's it going? Rax, remind me, will you, which format, when you sent me the raccoon folk write-up, did you send it via Discord, via Patreon, or via email? Because I'm like, I have to grab that because I want to put it up on the World Anvil, and then I realized I had totally forgotten how you sent it to me. So refresh my memory on that if you can, if you hear this, so that I can dig out your gold star stuff and start adding the race to the World Anvil, because I'm going to try to get all the races in. Oh, okay, good. Then one thing I want you to do also for your gold star, then name their primary city or settlement, whatever they call it, give it a name. That way I can put that up as part of, and we can start working on placing them on the world map. Not that it's like terribly like super important, but I'd like to get all the races kind of outlined. I do want to put some tabaxi in the world, guys. I just didn't want to do player character tabaxi right away. So we also can figure out that. And that is, those alternate races, by the way, the new races, quote unquote, or the ones that maybe don't show up in the player's handbook, but show up in other supplements, are great examples of things we could put on those other continents. So we'll be looking at all of that too. I do like the idea of the tabaxi. I do like the catfolk idea, but I think I want to place them somewhere in the future, not right now. I may put an NPC in the city though. There will be a lot of races that are not currently available for NPC races, like the one that Rax used his gold star on, that may still show up in the game, like as NPC characters for now. Hey, Brackart, how's it going? We're doing Fire Giant stuff today. Here, we'll get his sword on just so you guys can see where we are. I tend to work in bits and pieces, so Fire Giant, it has a big lava magma sword, and it's cool. And today I'm going to work on the Hellhound pelt for a little bit, and then I'm probably going to show how I would do non-metallic metal up on this big flat surface, which is a little bit difficult to tackle. So yes, charge. For those raiding with Brackart, I am Anne. I work for Reaper Miniatures. I created the Master Series paint line, which is, pretty much their premier paint line now. And then back in April, I moved out to the West Coast to be with my boyfriend, and I do streaming for them now. So I am ye old paint goddess. If you want to know how to use the paint and why it works, I am she. I'm a bit more into that, I would say, than any other online streaming paint personality, just because I have the ability to know exactly why the paint works the way it does. Because I learned just enough paint chemistry to make me dangerous in order to do better paint. Oh, cool. Very cool, Brackart. Yeah, it's a nice model. Doo-doo. All right, gonna get a little bit. Boom. Gonna get some of this orange mixed up. I used for his beard, I'm using kind of the colors I used in his beard to do this Hellhound pelt that he's on his shoulders. I do want to take it up to kind of an embery orange, so I may actually tilt these colors a bit more orange. His beard looks very orange, even though I used this color originally because we were shading it with a very red color and highlighting it with yellow. So I want that orange to come up with highlights here on the fur. But we'll see. I might want it just a little brighter. We'll see. So we've got our Hellhound pelt. We've got our ruddy leather. I probably want some walnut, which is the dark shadow there behind his head. Yeah, thanks, Brackart. Yeah, everything's coming up. Everything is, I tend to work in sections. I haven't done his eyes yet either. I need those to glow eventually. So really, I've been just building it out section by section to show people how I tackle everything on the giant. And there are still lots of places we have not yet tackled because he's huge. He is huge. In fact, his Reaper tag says huge. So I should have known that it would take me months to actually paint him. Hold on, I gotta grab some walnut brown. Walnut, where are you? I always keep you close. That is Nightmare Black. That is definitely not There it is. There are certain paints that never leave my desktop, that always are here, and walnut brown is one of them. Yeah, I mean, Rex, we'll talk about it else time. I just wanted to let you know that I needed to know where that write-up was going to be so that I could do it. And if anything's too broken or just seems weird to me, then I'll question you on it. But I mean, it's not a PC race at this time, so it doesn't matter so much. Just go with it and we'll deal with it. 1 second. For those of you who are watching but wonder what we're talking about, I am doing a D&D game on my own Twitch channel. We are painting the characters for it currently and discussing their personalities, and we are world building and all that fun stuff prior to the start of the campaign. I decided that if I couldn't have a D&D game locally because of COVID, I would start one on Twitch with all my friends. And this is one of our first characters, just so you can see. So Zari here is a bard, obviously, and I was working on her boots yesterday on stream. So she's also being painted kind of up in sections. I like to paint by section by section anyway, and it seems like a weird thing, except it gives me a sense of completion. When it takes me so long to paint, and it does, I'm a very slow painter. So if I just had to base coat everything and then just stare at it, I would get so depressed about it. I would feel like I wasn't making any progress. And the way I solved that was to start painting in sections where I start the skin and I finish the skin, right? And then I start, the hair and finish the hair or whatever. And doing that gives me, at least for one thing, it makes the model still look good on stream, right? So you're not just painting this base coated blob. So it gives people something to look at that shows what you can do. But it also, just for me, purely makes me happy because it makes me feel like I'm finishing things. Even though I haven't finished the model, enough of the model looks good that it keeps me inspired to work on it. So, I mean, I'm a weird one that way. I don't know that many other painters do it, but that's just why I do it. It's a matter of keeping motivated and sticking with a project. Is as if there's at least one thing on the project that I can look at and go, oh yeah, that's looking really good. Let's see, where can you see this? I've got a bit of glare from my lamp. But essentially, I'm going to start kind of putting in some orange highlights, and I'm mostly going to be putting them up in areas where I can see kind of the tool marks, where there are fur clumps. I'm not going to stress too much about it at this point, though. If I accidentally paint some of this highlight into a shadow, I can always come back, and I probably will come back with the walnut brown, which is a very dark brown, and just kind of define those things. So right now, you can actually paint this pretty fast. So I'm going to go and put it here. I've got a little nodule there that looks like he's got a couple of little bitty kind of hooks and strands. Maybe they're just little hooks in the hellhound fur, clumps in the hellhound fur. What I've always done, Rax, with the races that I want to give a really interesting or strong power to, these could also be just rings in the hellhound fur. I may paint them enamel gold. We'll see. But what I've always done is that only if there is an overpowered power, I just give it to the elders of the tribe, and the characters probably don't have access to it. Certainly wouldn't have access to it until they were like max level. It's that sort of thing. So then I can use it for flavor, but not worry about defining it for player characters. Just hold it out tantalizingly until such a time that maybe the players are powerful enough to consider actually fleshing it out. Yeah, some of these look like little rings in the hellhound fur. I may just paint them that way. Like, he has so much other bling on him that I could totally see that he would have little gold rings and stuff in his hellhound pelt. The mixture that I'm using right now is a mixture of 50/50 goblin skin and ruddy leather. So it makes this really pretty. It's almost oiled leather, but it's not as light as oiled leather. But it makes a really nice kind of orange-brown highlight. It would also be a great highlight for leather, actually. Right, so if only the elders, like if taking a full wood shape themselves, like a treant shape almost, was a thing that their race could do, then it would make sense for only the elders to have that ability and to pass it down pretty much from one generation to the next as to the appropriately powerful people within the tribe. In fact, an elder probably takes on a trainee, right? Because it's probably not a power that's mastered easily. I imagine that the true builders and growers of this society, the people who have the best wood shape abilities, tend to be the people running the show in your race. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but it kind of makes sense. Because if you depend on that for building out your city and for keeping everybody safe, then you would think those people would be pretty highly regarded. So just you can see the streaks in the fur. I'm bringing it up pretty, yeah, they're druidic base, yeah. Well, then it makes sense that they would have trainees. They would have younger members of society who are being trained by the elders, and I mean, if they're druidic based, one would argue that does that mean they're a theocracy? Like, do their religious rulers rule the roost, or since we're talking about systems of government so much for my world lately. I see. Think about their system of government. If they have one. They were, we did decide they were heavily influenced by the trickster gods, so maybe they don't have a really firm societal model. That is always possible. Could be pretty loose. So you can see now the streaks that I'm putting in. Felia, I am using an iPivo. It's a document camera. I love it. It's iPivo VZX. It's you can't really see it on my face cam here. Hold on. There it is. See the little teal arm here? There it is. My face cam's normal, you know, C920 Logitech, but I wanted really high resolution for my miniatures because I'm capable of doing really fine work on my models. So I wanted everything. I wanted really good resolution and to be able to really show you guys the brush strokes on some of this stuff. So yeah, I love it. It's not a cheap camera. My Patreon, when my Patreon made its first goal, I was able to buy it. But it is, I would say, if you're a good painter and you want to get close to what you're doing, you really want to show people every brushstroke and the fine detail that you do, I think that this camera is really worth it. It's between $300 and $600 depending on where you go. They got a lot more expensive. I got mine right when COVID was just starting out. They got a little more expensive in the interim there because so many teachers. This is a camera that teachers use in classrooms a lot. So I think it kind of got in demand during that time. Plus, everybody else was grabbing it for streaming as well if they were in an appropriate, if they were doing crafts or anything where you have to show fine work and detail. But I would say worth it. And if I broke it tomorrow, I'd pay $600. I paid $300 the first time I bought it. Makes sense, Rax. So then you'd say that your raccoon folk have a very high regard for the elderly, is what I'm hearing. It's something that defines a society if they respect their elders. All right, so there you go. You guys can see I'm not like following perfectly every strand, although I'm trying to get it mostly right. A lot of this is very smooth. If you get this model, you'll see that the strands are really just vaguely suggested and they're not super clear. So that gives you, I think it's just the wireless capability, Coobs. I just got the VZX because I saw it. It was teal. It was cute. I bought it. And I thought the other reason I went for wireless is that sometimes I do stuff for my dog club that involves visual presentations. So it did cross my mind that I could also use this for that. Whereas, you know, if you are always going to have it, so far I've always had it plugged into my computer, so I haven't needed the wireless capability. But if I ever did need it, I'd have it. So for me, I think that's the only difference though between the two models. Yeah, that sounds like a good one-shot Ninja B Timbers. Reminds me of like something like Paranoia, where everything is just chaos, utter chaos. We have many raccoon fans here in this community. Yeah, I do tend to sometimes pull the trigger on something because it's the color I like. And it's cute. In this case, since teal and purple are traditional miniature painting mascot colors, I thought, you know, well, it makes sense, right? So now I'm going to grab my pure goblin orange and I'm just going to try to really just go over the highlights I've already made to give a shaggier look to the fur. And then if I need to, I can glaze. Yeah, Rax, you can, just put it in the stuff. I don't want to distract from the stream with talking a lot about the game since this is the Reaper stream. I just really wanted you to. I also don't want you to pour all your energy into talking about it and not finish your write-up. So, because that's a thing. If you didn't know, I forget which writer turned me on to that. I think it might have been Stephen King, where he's like, when you're really excited about something, don't talk about it, just start writing. Because otherwise, all the energy that you would be putting into writing it down and being excited about it, you're spending on telling people about it. I always thought that was actually pretty insightful because I do find that that's true of me. It's not true of everybody. But yes, definitely finish writing it, because it's been a while. Now people who have read this stuff in our chat are interested in that, so you should finish it so I can put it on the World Anvil. So I'm going over the same strands a little bit. I'm just making my brushstrokes smaller. And I'm probably going to concentrate, there's kind of clumps here. Like you can see there's a definite clump right behind his head, right? So I can bring that more orange. And make that come out a little bit more. Like if you can identify clumps, like distinct clumps, this is where you can lighten them all a little bit more than some other areas. And if you see that there's kind of a clump here, but that maybe you got a little muddy, or you could define it a little better, you can grab some of your walnut plus your ruddy brown, and you can go in and do that. Kind of to bring your shadow back in and define that clump a little bit more. So we're kind of paint plastic surgerying, right? Because when you see this, it's just like one kind of mostly flat with some clumps pelt. But you can make it a lot more interesting if you isolate clumps of it. So let's do that. Let's grab, let's maybe thin our walnut just a little bit more. Just so it's a little more, it's not harsh, right? I just want a kind of a softer line, a softer shadow. Oh yeah, I got you, Rex. Well, then you need to conserve your energy. Yeah, that sounds like something that Critical Role would have thought was awesome, Ninja. I mean, it just satisfies all of the great things for a one-shot. You know, highly entertaining, highly chaotic, lots of fun for everybody, you know. But you would never want to run a campaign at all like it. So yeah, so I'm going to bring in my walnut, and I'm going to try to like define more clumps. You can see the walnut is thinned down enough that it's not making a huge impact, and that's okay. I really just want to kind of create like subdivisions of this fur, like so that I can make it look more interesting than just one flat sheet of fur. So I'm going to go and do some pretty heavy shading, even if I have to do it over strands. And notice that I'm still using the brushstroke in the direction of the fur. When I accidentally interrupt a strand that I previously painted, I want it to interrupt it so that it looks more like fur. So I'm going to continue to use this brushstroke since the fur is running this way. I'm going to continue to use this brushstroke to define these areas. And try to introduce a little bit more shadow in areas, like there. See how that makes it a little more interesting, guys? See how using the dark brings it in? Hey, Gurgi. Yeah, we don't have a Justin today. You take care of yourself, Rax, if you're in a healthcare support position. You guys are champs during this time. But you're also, you know, hope nothing bad happens. Let's just say that. I have a couple friends who are working healthcare. One friend who's a cardiac nurse out in Pennsylvania, and she's a trooper. All right, so I think I am going to say that these little ring things are actually little rings in the hound fur, like that he's got some bling in his hound fur. I don't know if Jason meant them that way, or Chris. Was this Chris Lewis? I can't remember. I think it is maybe Chris, but some of these little rings and things don't make a lot of sense with the fur, I think. They might just be meant to be little hook strands or mats, but I think I like them better as bling. So I'm going to bling them. So to keep them to the point where they stand out from the fur, I'm going to first cover them over with this walnut. Fairly solid coat of it. And that lets me kind of paint them as something else, break up the fur a little bit. I could actually play with that a little bit if I really wanted to, and if I had the time, and if this was my centerpiece model for like the conclusion of a campaign, guys, I might even go in and use some green stuff to actually create obvious tails coming out of these rings, so that it looks like he's using the rings to like separate the pelt out into little tails and segments. Hey Francis. Yeah, I'm super tired too. It seems like a lot of people woke up really early today. David woke me up because he couldn't sleep, and then it took me a long time to get back to sleep. So, like, that one almost has a little tail coming out of it, so I'm just gonna go with that and kind of try to play to it. But yeah, so using a lot of walnut here to break up my areas and make this look more interesting, right? You see how the dark and light makes it look less like just a ready colored blob and more, and it also, the nice thing about the walnut also, if you think about it, is it looks like there's charred tips on the hellhound's fur now. And that's totally in character with a hellhound, so. Wednesday part 3 is very tiring. Yeah. It is very tiring, but you know, we're finally getting some resolution on the, or at least getting close to resolution on the election, so I'm looking forward to the weekend. Let's just say that. But yeah, so that's part of why I'm like, this looks really charred now, and I like it. I like it a lot. So I'm going to run with that. Grab more of my goblin skin. Ha. I left the door of the office open, and David just got home from the grocery store. And my windows cracked a little bit to give fresh air in here so Kiri doesn't get too warm. And it's the temperature dove last night, so this icy chill of air just hit my elbow, and I'm like, oh no. All right, and I think I am going to introduce some real orange into this equation. Let me grab my sunrise. So sunrise orange, which is which is, you know, pretty bright orange. I think I'm going to use it to raise the profile of this color. Yeah, the wind is definitely directed so that the when the door opens, we get that breeze through. It's coming right next to me. It's this window over here, so it's this elbow. Luckily, it's not my painting elbow. It didn't make me, like, you know, mess anything up or anything. Now, the other thing we might want to do, if we're going to add some orange to this color. Now, notice that it did lighten it. So we have to kind of, like, figure out, okay, so sometimes when you just add a bright color to lighten something, it also saturates it, right? It makes it brighter in general. And sometimes that doesn't look convincing as a highlight. Sometimes you also have to add a little bit of white or something. So I'm kind of going to use this and kind of just make a judgment call based on how it looks as to whether I need. Yeah. Yeah, it is a little chilly here today. I mean, it's good. It makes me feel like fall, which makes me want to write because it gets me in the mood for nano. My writing is so seasonally attuned because I've just traditionally always done NaNoWriMo. When you've been doing it for 13 years, you're like, when it gets to be September, you start getting in the mood to write, and then you realize it's because it's a habit. Alrighty, so I'm using some of this orange to pick up the fur here. And so far I like it. It's not too saturated because the goblin skin itself is very kind of brownish orange. So that's helping to keep this orange from being too bright. It is a fairly realistic highlight, I think. But if I want to go up one more step, I'm definitely going to be adding white to this orange color rather than another dose of bright orange. Because there's definitely a limit. And I will want another highlight. Remember, the basic rule is highlight it till you think it looks good and then throw another highlight on it. At least one, maybe two. So for here, what I'm doing with this highlight is I really want to bring out where there are clumps of fur. So I want to use this to suggest texture that really isn't necessarily there. So like if I think there's a clump here and then maybe I need to shade in that area a bit. I might need this to be a clump and I might need to throw some shadow in here. And make your shadows irregular. Like, you know, maybe there is a shadow like between this and this, but then this might be all one area here. You know, make it a little irregular. That's going to make it look natural. Nature is not uniform. Nature has cool patterns, but she is not boring. All right, so now we're getting there. I'm going to move this out and see. Yeah, that makes it brighten up a bit. That's more like what it looks like in person. So you can see there, especially when I tilt it there, you can see this orange coming in, which should help make it look more like hellhound fur. If you guys have any questions, I guess everybody's either falling asleep or distracted today or at work, so I totally get it if there's no chat. I'm trying to think of other things to chat at you about. Wanted to thank everybody for my awesome stream on my own channel yesterday. We got a really high number of viewers, especially those of you who watch, who maybe tune on for Reaper Live and then come on over to my channel while you're waiting for it to start. It really helps boost my numbers toward the partners thing, so I really appreciate it. Though I'll be streaming a little less. This month because of Nano, I'm taking Wednesdays off from streaming. Because I really, having time in the afternoon to write is kind of my peak writing time, so I'm really productive during that time, so I'm going to take advantage of it this month. Might add back in a Wednesday stream afterwards. Or I might do something different. Might be a different Wednesday stream. I don't know. We'll have to think about it. Let's figure out this clump right here. And if there's a big rounded area like this, which actually doesn't have any strands defined, by all means grab your dark color and create strands artificially. Paint plastic surgery it to break up the area and make it more interesting. Oh, sorry. National Novel Writing Month. Yes. I do it every year. I've done it every year since 2007. It's how I wrote my first novel. And my second novel. And my third novel. The first novel's in a trunk. Like, the first novel you write is always going to kind of be trash, or at least, even if it has redeemable spots, it's gonna, show you where all your weaknesses are. So I may go back to that at some point. It was an urban fantasy novel, actually. And I'm still fond of the world. So I may go back to it someday, but yeah, the second two novels are my two that I'm working on editing now for NaNoWriMo, so that I can actually submit them. And I'm going to start submitting the first one even before the second one is finished editing, I think. Otherwise, it gets too close. You always have to question yourself whether you're putting something off because you want everything to be, as good as it can be before you start, or if you're putting it off because you're afraid of the results. So for me, I've decided, screw it, I'm just going to submit the novel that is done with editing and ready for publication. And if it turns out that they don't want it unless I'm done with the second one as well, then I'll know. It's over a month, Francis. You need to average out to 75 viewers over the course of a month per stream. So our Tuesday streams are a little bit lower, but they are slowly growing. And every stream that we do, we get a certain number of new people who come in and say, hey, I just stumbled onto this stream and it's really cool. I'll follow you. We had a lot of follows yesterday. So I'm hoping that it's not something, Twitch is not something that you do overnight, just like Patreon. It's building a community and building something that people enjoy and really want to watch. And so it takes time. But we are slowly going up, so that's good. But I really appreciate everybody who comes to watch me before Reaper Live, because that definitely shoots it up. Like, we hit a record number of total views yesterday. We hit a record number of viewers at one time, and I hit a very high number of new follows and stuff like that. So yesterday was a really good stream. Plus, it was a really fun stream with you guys. So, and I'm really happy with how the model's turning out. I need to prep, this weekend I'm going to be prepping the next two models, the Priest and the Tiefling Mage. I need to do the Tiefling's horns. I don't know. I haven't looked at it, Magnetic Gumby, but maybe people in the chat know. Yeah, Ninja, I get you. Yeah, well, I mean, especially if you write a lot, even if you're just writing role playing stuff, and you're not really writing, like novel stuff, you get to be a better writer, right? So you definitely, you go back to your earlier writing, you're like, oh my gosh, terrible. And that definitely, like, with me, my big problem was plotting, like, and somewhat dialogue. Like, I needed to add more tension to my dialogue. So definitely when I go back to my urban fantasy novel, which was the first full novel I wrote for Nano, I notice the plot holes, right? I notice that, oh my god, I need a complete plot redo on this. I need to write a ton of new scenes. I need, I know where it starts, I know where it ends, but the stuff in between is fun, but it's not focused, right? So, so yeah, someday I'll go back to my urban fantasy world. I do really like it. I do really like my protagonist. So it's just, and I like a lot of the NPC characters. So I just need to actually sit down with it. And I got much better at plotting because I started reading a lot of screenwriting books. And there's a lot of good ones out there that'll give you basic guidance. And once they start out pretty formulaic, but the key, just like with anything in this world, is to start with the formula and then twist it. So that you can get, creative with it, but still make a good plot, right? So there are certain foundational things that a good plot has. uh Somewhat, Valandar, somewhat. It depends on, like, right? I mean, that's what I mean. And every writer is different, Valandar. Every writer is different. I started out being very much a pantser, which is, I just write off the top of my head and I just go for it. But then I realized that wasn't helping me with plots. So now what I do is I do kind of a bullet point plot, but everything else, and when I actually start writing, there's still a lot of surprises. And I like that. I like kind of discovering, because what I find is that I always come up with better ideas as I write than I do if I'm plotting in advance. So if I just do kind of a loose structure, then as I can write the book, I'm going to get even better ideas. You guys are funny. But yeah, I know there's at least a couple of writers I've read who say that they do it that way. If they have a complicated plot, they start from the end scene. I think Rachel Aaron is one of them. Other people, like, I think Gurm maps it all out in advance. I think he's very much not a pantser. I think he's a planner. But he has so complicated. He's got so many storylines that I totally could see you'd go crazy if you tried to pants that. You'd end up rewriting 3/4 of it. So, all right. So through judicious use of shading and further highlighting, we are starting to bring this Hellhound fur out into... I can see where the mold line was, sadly, but oh well. This guy is not competition level, so we're okay. We're okay with our mold line. I removed most of it, but you can still see where the plastic kind of bends, especially in this light. All right. Gonna start adding a little bit more orange now to some of these areas to bring them out a little more. And then I'm gonna bring up yet another highlight. But yeah, what I tend to do for my plotting, what I like to do is I use a fairly simple plot structure, but then I've got multiple protagonists. And so when you interweave 2 or 3 people's different plot lines, you actually end up feeling like a very complex plot, and it's very rich. But in reality, if you broke down each person, you'd see that their arc is not as complex. But I like having multiple protagonists. I like the traditional fantasy novel where you follow a few different people. So my first novel, I just had one main viewpoint for the most part, but I do like multiple viewpoints. All right, so we're getting some of this. I'm going to bring out some of this fur here. Where I'm losing strands, I'm just going to go back, grab my walnut, and if I paint over an area that I think really should define a strand, I'm just going to put a dark line in there. because my walnut's thinned down, it's not going to be a really harsh line. It'll just be a nice shadow to help define those hairs. See where I brought those hairs out. But yeah, I definitely will go up one more highlight. I'll mix my current orange and goblin skin mix with a tiny bit of like an off-white. Maybe even lemon yellow, because it's got yellow in it, but it's also got a lot of white. And I do like my lemon yellow. I know a lot of you bought it when I was using it recently and were like, oh, this is a nice color. I'm like, yes, yes it is. I have long liked lemon yellow.
But it violates your food name rule.
Haha, it does somewhat. Except that I really named it after the interior decorator color. It doesn't actually look like lemons, I think. But in interior decorating, lemon yellow is a light greenish yellow, so... It's just unfortunate that it's also a food name. However, it is a food name that most children would not want to eat, so at least I did that. Maybe I should have just done that. Maybe I should have just done, like, broccoli green and stuff like that, so that nobody in their right mind would ever want to use it as food, right? Jägermeister olive, or whatever color Jägermeister is. What color is Jägermeister? Is it, like, black? It's in that green bottle. We were discussing how disgusting it was the other night. I felt it was disgusting. There are herbal liqueurs that I like a lot, but that's not one of them. Clear? Is it clear? Well, then we couldn't. We'd have to like do a gloss medium called, you know, Jägermeister gloss or something. We'd have to make it smell that horrible smell, like cough syrup. It's all on Sadie now. If she wants to play around with naming things with food names, she can violate my rule. You lied as to... I thought it was a dark color. A lot of herbal liqueurs have color to them. Like Tuaca has that orange, and my favorite is Galliano, which is the vanilla licorice kind of flavor. Vanilla anise, I guess. I love that stuff, or I used to love it. And that's a yellow. Oh, you were thinking Goldschlager, yeah. Yeah, I liked absinthe also. Chartreuse, I used to drink chartreuse, although it's really so harsh. Like, my gut can't handle hard liquor anymore, so all these things are just in the past. I can sometimes do a mixed drink if it has enough mix in it. Like, I can drink my whiskey old fashions, which I really love, if I put like double the soda water in there. But I can't touch a really strong one. It's just hits my guts and makes me feel sick pretty much right away. So no more heavy drinking, Anne, that's for sure. No more New Year's parties. I only ever got sick once for at a New Year's party, and that was enough to teach me that I did not need to ever drink that much ever again. It was like right after college, I think. It was a very depressing party. Yeah, absinthe is... I like the flavor of absinthe. I'd have to mix it with something at this point if I was ever going to drink it. But I like black licorice and anise flavors, so I'm one of those people. David thinks they're gross. Right, David?
What?
You don't like black licorice?
No, I don't.
That means more for me, guys. Alrighty, so we've got some nice streaks on this fur. See how furry it's starting to look, guys? Like, when it started out, it looked kind of clumpy, right? But now it looks furry. It actually has a fur texture. So we've kind of plastic surgery'd that. You guys are so funny. Hey, Jelly, how's it going? Everybody's funny. Everybody's got an opinion on black licorice. That's like, it's like other controversial subjects. It's like some people adore it and some people hate it. I am one of those people who adore it and say, okay, more for me. Actually, the thing that got me sick was chocolate martinis. And to this day, I cannot drink Bailey's Irish Cream. And I loved cream liqueurs up until that point. But the chocolate martinis they were mixing were Godiva, 2 different kinds of Godiva chocolate liqueur, and Bailey's. I can't remember if there was something else in there. But pretty much does not taste like alcohol, and we're very easy to go too overboard. So yeah, that was... Cannot do it. Can't do anything with Bailey's. It's a breezy day out here, and I can hear the dry leaves tumbling. Kiri and I went downstairs this morning and got to crunch through a bunch of big leaves. It was kind of fun. They cleaned out everything this week, and of course right away then the trees, dumped another load. Black licorice, just like anything else, can kill you if you eat too much. Is that the lesson here, Jellyware? Like, because, drinking too much water can kill you. You can just go on the list of things. So yeah, let's add, we need a little bit more orange over here. You can see I've done a pretty good job of making it look furry over here, but we still have a little bit of clumpiness over here in places. I need to figure out what I'm doing with some of this. Yeah, I don't do any of it now. Like, if I'm going to do any hard liquor mix now, it's like the only drink I really let myself have now is like an old fashioned. Because that's the only mixed drink that I like enough to, to kind of risk it. If I think my gut can handle it. And I'm far more likely to mix it myself rather than get it at a restaurant, if I'm eating a big dinner, I can do it, but I do love them though, with Luxardo cherries. The whiskey old-fashioned, I should say, not a whiskey sour, but an old-fashioned traditional, which is more sweet. We used to call it a whiskey old-fashioned sweet in Wisconsin. I think it might be their state drink. And it seems like it's a funny drink too, because it seems like everywhere in the US they make it a little bit different. Like, and in Texas they made it a lot like they made it in Wisconsin, in Madison, when I used to order them. But out east they made them really like no soda water, no club soda. Like it was all alcohol and ice, and that was just way too much for me. And then Oklahoma does it that way too. It's like all alcohol with no mixer. So it's funny how drinks vary from state to state. Just gonna tilt this so I can see it. This looks pretty good. You guys can see. Tequila is the one drink that makes me hyper. Everything else eventually puts me to sleep. But we used to go out and play like night frisbee, full contact night frisbee after we did our poker night, and we would if I wanted to stay up that late and actually like be awake, I would make sure I was drinking tequila while we played poker. It's the only drink that would keep me awake. I don't know what it is about tequila, but it makes me hyper when It's so funny how people react differently to different boozes. All right, so we're getting better on the fur over here. I do want to tighten up my strands here and make them a little lighter in this patch right here. And then I can come in and really, the last highlight will be probably only inside each clump to really define the fur clumps. But that's getting there. That's looking pretty good. I do need to hit this back area here. You can see there's a lot of shadow here. There's not a lot of light compared to this side where the light is coming out a little bit, because this is sticking out. It would catch the light. So I'm going to go and grab a little bit more of my midtone, because I think I got too dark on some of this. And I'm going to paint over a little bit of that walnut. Don't want to paint over too much because it's helping me define the different strands, but I want it a little lighter back here. A little lighter. There you go. That's better. So just one like light coat brushing over some thinned goblin skin and ruddy leather brought it up enough that I can see the fur more. Yeah, I don't know. I liked fruity drinks when I was a, like college ager because I liked the sweetness and the fruit. So I was a big like strawberry, raspberry margarita. I think raspberry margaritas were my go-to. But I didn't like beer for a very long time. It took me a very long time to develop a taste for beer. And a long time to develop a taste for wine as well. Although we drink a fair amount of wine now. All right, so we brought up some of the fur. Do I like that a little better? Yeah. See how we went from having a lot of like just tiger stripes down here to having more of a mass of fur and what I did is I lost a little bit of my shading here. So I do have this big clump of dark here, and I do kind of want to add a little bit of hair. There's just a tiny bit of texture in it, so I'm going to impinge on it a little bit. Just so it's not quite just like this big blank area. See, that adds a little bit of texture to it, so now it looks furry. I am mostly a non-alcoholic and these days, although every once in a while, when I have wine, I have like 2 ounces. I don't have very much at all. And I don't miss it. I've got my sparkling water, which is super tasty if I want a treat drink. But I have wine. I like to have a glass of wine with David when we go out to really nice restaurants. So I do keep myself kind of in the game as far as drinking it a little bit every once in a while to keep my system acclimated to it. Though I am very sensitive to alcohol, so I have to kind of watch it. But yeah, I do like having a nice glass of wine with my guy when we go out. That's one of my great pleasures in life, so. All right, so now we got some nice fur, some nice shaggy texture. It's got some nice charred edges, as might befit a hellhound. If I look at him from the front, I like it. It's not distracting, but it does give you a little bit of visual interest up here. So it's not just featureless anymore, which is great. They all taste different, but they all taste yucky, Francis. That's funny. Yeah, it took me a while to like reds. Like, I liked sweet wine. I was very much a sweet tooth kind of drinker because I'm just a sweet tooth kind of Anne. Which means this weekend, guys, cookie baking time. I'm in the mood. Let's make this cookie baking time. I want you all to bake cookies this weekend and report on what you made. Let's have that fall challenge, shall we? Because it seems to me like we're close enough to the holidays, or we're getting close enough to the holiday season we can start baking. That's what I think. All right, I'm going to mix one more highlight for this fur. Yeah, that used to be me, Francis. Like, when I was really young, like, I actually didn't take my first drink until, other than, like, having sipped Dad's wine experimentally as, what, a 12-year-old, when he offered it. But other than that, I did not drink till I was 26. I was actually, during my college days, I was a total abstainer. Because all around me, I saw my friends just getting drunk and doing stupid things, and I just didn't want to do that. But then, yeah, at 26, I started working with friends who did go out and drink, so I would try stuff, and I got into, some drinks. Yes, Dragon Eye. Why are you making cookies? Because Anne told me I had to, and then I had to report what I made. Yes, absolutely. Blame me. Toss me under the truck. He can take it up with me. I'm going to try a drop of lemon yellow, guys, like I said I was going to. Lemon yellow is 9009. It's a very greenish yellow, so it's fantastic for mixing with things to make light greens. But it also can work if you want to mute out an orange. Since it is a greenish yellow, it will mute the orange a little bit, meaning it will make it a little less bright when you mix it in. But since I'm aiming not for brightness, not for big saturation, I'm into that, so that's what I actually want. Okay, Valander, have fun. Thank you for coming. Have a great weekend. Alrighty, so let's get our final highlight here. And I might go up a little bit more. We'll see. It depends on how bright this looks once I put it on. So I just mixed a drop of lemon yellow with a few brushfuls. It's probably about a 3-to-1. And I'm going to keep it fairly strong because I want to use it to suggest strands. So I don't want it to be layering. I want it to highlight some of these nice strands here. And now this is the time where if I'm going to pay really attention to hitting fine details or to making fine strands, now this is the last highlight is when I'll do it. Or the second to last if I decide I need one more. But I will be very precise with this. Whereas before I didn't really care if I was painting over strands or if I wasn't. Now I'm going to concentrate on at least painting over the things that I have pre-highlighted and being precise about it. Because at this point, if I really want the strands to suggest themselves, now is when I need to tighten up my details, see? So as you go up in highlights, if you're going for a texture effect, tighten your detail as you go. So you can start diffused and rough with your detail, but then tighten it. So now I got that nice piece of, see how much that brings that up? That really makes it glow there. I like it. Also really brings it up around his face, see? Mai Tais, yeah. Yeah, I do like rum drinks, or I used to, but it's too much sugar now. When I went low carb, then I pretty much dropped out a lot of that. I can make a low carb whiskey old fashioned, so even with Luxardo cherries. They only add 1.5 carbs per cherry. I can do that. So just gently adding in some nice defined strands here. And because I do want them defined, I'm not thinning them, like I said, as much as you'd think. They need to be thinned enough for the paint to come off your brush really finely. But it also needs to be opaque enough. There we go. That's looking nice, actually. I like that. I think I need a little bit more highlighting up here. Really makes his shoulders come up where it meets the light. And sometimes if I feel like there's too much area between these strands where it's not, you see how smooth it is over here where the strands are close together, but here the strands aren't sculpted together as much, you can totally paint plastic surgery a couple of strands that quote unquote don't exist if you need to, just to make things look a little nicer. You could join these strands up, for example. Get a little more inexact and then tighten it up. And that looks better there. Just adding a couple of strands. Yeah, keeping it simple, I mean, well, it's definitely lower calorie that way, D. Clearman. I like mojitos, I will say that. You can keep those simple and low carb too. But I just really don't drink much. Like, it really doesn't, my system doesn't really like it. I have a suspicion that it might also be a trigger for my gut problems. So I generally, like I said, just a little wine with David here and there. And for the other, I tend to ignore it. Unless, like, he entices me with a really good beer. Like, he got this mole stout from Flying Dog Brewery that is very tasty. I failed my save versus glutinous beer. It attacked me. I had to drink it. So good. All sorts of fall spice flavors, and then a mole, chili pepper as well. And chocolate on a stout. It's just really, really good. It's a dessert beer for sure. So now I'm just starting to bring out those. And bring out those tiny little strands, see those with those more precise brush strokes. So now when I see little clumps, I'm going to re-accentuate the suggestion that I have going of clumpy fur by focusing my highlights in like the center of each clump, so that I can, again, make this look more interesting. You can see how it looks more visually interesting than the slab of red-brown that we had in the beginning. This is taking a while, but I'm kind of enjoying myself on this fur, so hopefully you guys aren't terribly bored. And it is useful to know how to treat this stuff, but because you will run into fur that's just not sculpted great. That's kind of sculpted. I used to call it cottage cheese fur because it was like clumpy. It didn't actually look like fur. You see it less often nowadays, but you still run into some animal models that are sculpted like that, or capes, fur capes on people that are sculpted like that. So it helps to have this kind of technique in your back pocket for things like that, where you want it to look better. Oh god, my cat Pan used to fight the TP rolls and then shred them with his back claws. Twisted Oma, so I feel you. When he was younger, he grew out of it as he got older, but yeah, we would just find a ripped up TP roll. Let's see here. Let's move this guy back into the light. Get myself back on this highlighting binge. Got a little clumpy here, so I have to really paint plastic surgery these parts here. Kind of have to just paint detail where there might not be a lot of detail, just to maintain the illusion. Oh, good, Paladin. I'm glad to know that that it's working for you. Good. Yeah, I mean, as a colorblind person, I know a lot of very good painters who are colorblind, so don't be disheartened just because you are. A lot of painting has to do with brights and darks. So that, in that way, what I suggested recently to one of my coaching people on my Patreon, because they have a problem like seeing kind of warm colors as they should be, like they have a little bit of color variance, and I suggested they start working actually with a very limited palette, like pretty much pick out primaries, black and white, a few useful browns, and just start working with those and mixes of those. That way, if you start with colors that work well together and you're predictably mixing the same colors in to darken and lighten them, it can get you around some of the challenges that you have working colorblind, right? You have to mix a lot, but it'll keep you from grabbing a weird muted color that maybe you are seeing as one color when it's not. So sometimes sticking to more saturated known hues, mixing what you need, kind of double checking it with your friends to make sure that you did indeed mix the color that you wanted. That can help a lot if you're colorblind. And it gives you, at that point, then a really good base to jump off from, right? Because you start with those colors, but then you can start adding in other colors as you go, as you learn what works with the colors you started with, until you've built up a very nice, big stable of colors, and you know what they all do, and you know what they all go with. And at that point, you can paint as well as anybody. There we go. Just bringing up a little bit of this edge here. So lights versus darks. You can see our fur coming up there. But yeah, definitely using lights and darks to pick out different bunches of fur and clumps of fur is pretty important when you're trying to paint something like this. Which doesn't give you a lot to go on. Oh, wow. Oh, that's really cool, Paladin. That sounds really cool. Like, I'm sad that you don't have green rods, but it's cool that you worked with the FAA to help colorblind people. Like, that's super awesome. Way to leverage your foil, you know, your quirks to help other people. Like, that's fantastic. But yeah, then it's rough, right? And it's like, well, do I avoid green for all my life? You know. Plus, then you're not gonna. I don't know if you can. I'm not sure how that version of color blindness works, but can you see things with a greenish hue, or can you just not like yellow plus black makes kind of a greenish hue? So if you mix a yellowish brown with black, you get kind of a greenish brown. Will you just totally miss that green shift? Will it just look gray to you? Going to get kind of the back side of this fur, this little edge here. Start to highlight that. Hard to differ shades. Not gray, just shades all seem the same. I gotcha. Starting, yeah, well, then I would say start with contrast, Paladin. Start with, probably work with zenith priming, like on Mr. Orc here, where you start with a black prime and then you take a nice fine white. A lot of people use an airbrush primer for the white. And concentrate on contrast and, you know, known colors, like colors that you can differentiate. But just paint really dramatically and try to maybe limit your palette to just a couple of colors, maybe 3, with one of them being probably a neutral. Then you'll be able to kind of counter that. But because you'll still, since you can still see light and dark, then it makes sense to capitalize on that and go for high drama, very dramatic paint jobs with maybe a very limited palette, but it'll still look really cool because you're doing such dramatic. So I would focus, for you, since your color is your weak point, I would focus on lighting. If I was going to take, like, you know, as you start painting, as you start in the hobby, focus on learning lighting first. And then that, once you get an ace at that, then that gives you a total ace in the hole to work with painting in general. Because you don't have to use a lot of colors in miniature painting. If your highlights and shadows are really dramatic, it'll look fantastic even if you're only using 2 colors. So I would definitely look into zenith priming if you haven't. Because it helps you guide you as to where your dramatic lights and shadows should be. I had a friend who was in his 30s before he realized he was colorblind, and so I was trying to help him also as a miniature painter. But yeah, if everything is gray, then I would totally go with high contrast. Learn how to punch up your highlights and down your shadows and paint miniatures like that. And start introducing colors, and probably then you'll have to, like, you know, kind of work with friends and feedback. You know, like before you start painting, you know, put up the 2 colors or 3 colors you're thinking of using, and ask people, hey guys, how do these look together, right? Get some second opinions, and then you can kind of take notes on, like I said, like what colors are good together, and that will help. But then you can still enjoy painting, because even if you can't see the colors as others see them, doing a really amazing, like, light and dark, you know, high contrast, like my bust girl with her skin tones where there's super high contrast, that's something you can enjoy, like, even if you can't see the color, it's just so, it's just so striking, right? And it does take a good model. Like, you want a model with a lot of good detail, but it can be fun too, just to, push even a simple model with really bright lights and darks, really high contrast. And then you'll develop, a style that's your own, and you can enjoy the hobby. Yeah, that makes sense, Paladin. Cool on the resin printer. Yeah, we have a lot. We talk about 3D printing a lot in my shows, both here and over on my Painting Big channel on Twitch, because a lot of my patrons and a lot of my Twitch followers are into 3D printing. So you are in good company. Welcome. And I guess I haven't plugged my Patreon yet. So Patreon is patreon.com/paintingbig, which is also my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/paintingbig. I love my Patreon to death. You guys keep me going. So, yeah, and we've got a Discord. So there is quite a bit of talk on the Discord about 3D printing. I'm sure the Reaper Discord also has a lot of talk about it. I'm certain there are a bunch of you who do it. And I think, yeah, there we go. And the YouTube, of course. It's like the Abacus bot. But I think we have an exclamation point Discord in chat here for the Reaper Discord. But yeah, if you like what I do, I have been considering doing a piece for my Patreon about high contrast, just really pushing contrast in your paint jobs, because it's something I had to learn, because I was very timid about it for a very long time in my painting. So maybe that'll be this month or next month. I have to think about how I want to tackle it. But maybe we could, maybe I could do something like that's a miniature, but only using just a couple colors and using contrast, really high contrast, to suggest a lot. Aaron Lovejoy has showed this if anybody's on Miniature Monthly. I know that when in times when he talks about airbrushing over a Zenith priming job, he'll talk about how, you can get so many midtones just using a couple of colors, so many different tones over that black and white primer. Now again, we're just being very precise with our strands on the edge of the cape here. I've got some, I'm going to have to do that in red, so I do want to leave kind of a dark border here at the shadow of the hair, but this little, I've painted it in black here, but it does need to be red based on this, although it may be a red and black check, actually. So we'll see. But at any rate, now we've got pretty good fur coverage here. So now I'm just going to look at it from different angles, see if there's anything. I do see that that I could disguise this this bit of a line I've got going through the top that used to be a mold line if I extend some of my paint down. Hey there, Ash. Good to see you. Oh, Gergie, thanks for the link to my Patreon. There it is. If anybody is interested, we would happily have you. This month, I'm about to post up a video on how to unload your brush, which is to help people who a lot of people tell me they have a lot of problem when they learn to thin their paint. They have a lot of problem controlling the paint, and so I wanted to. Hey, thanks for that pepper plant. Welcome. I haven't seen you before. Hi, I'm Ann. Thank you for that Prime sub. We appreciate it. A sub for the show is a vote for the show. So I'm gonna essentially put a little bit more brightness here to make sure that I'm kind of going off, because I have this mold line. You can kind of see it. And so I'm going to try to disguise it by kind of painting over it like it's not there with my lights and darks, which will help to hide the fact that there's a slight rise there. I took off the big evidence of it, but it's still just a little bit of a rise in the fur through that area. So I'm going to disguise it a little bit. This isn't a competition model, so I'm not as concerned with having it be perfect. But I don't want it to be like super slap you in the face evident either, so. So like extending bits of fur in that direction will help with that. Hey there, Wotan's Curse. Have you seen this one? You're new to us. Here's this fire giant. So his sword is like one of his coolest things. Here, let me back out, guys. So let's take a look at him overall. There we go. So I haven't done the back of the sword yet with the lava. Thank you. Everybody loves his beard. It's so funny to me. But yes, he does have awesome facial hair. But yeah, so that's what he's coming at. And I was just painting the pelt over his shoulders as hellhound fur. So that's why it's all reddish and orangish and has kind of the black tips. But yeah, I think that goes, guys. I think that goes really, actually, if I look at it, it goes really well with like the glowing sword up here. If I wanted to, I could glaze a little bit of extra orange right down on his shoulders, and it would really, like, it really looks to me like the fur and the sword are kind of reflecting each other's glows. I really like that. So yeah, he's coming along. This one is one that's going to take me forever to paint, obviously, because he's huge. You can see how big he is when I'm holding him. He's a proper giant. But yeah, we've been painting him for a while. I haven't played with him for a while on stream, but since we had done monsters all this week, next week we'll probably do player characters. I ordered a bunch of really cool models from Reaper, so we'll probably work on both established models like the Duelist, and maybe, because I've got a lot of monsters up there right now, but I don't have a lot of characters. Maybe I'll work on, I have the Elvish Blacksmith. I really like her. I wanna paint her for sure. So maybe we'll do her on the stream. Gesundheit, David, says the stream. Yeah, thank you, Couple Cosplay. It's good to see you again. Yeah, this is Mr. Fire Giant. So I started out trying to do metallics and kind of rusted metallics on the other side of the sword, and I decided I didn't like it. I wanted to do a huge magma blade, so I still have to go back and actually redo this sort of thing on the other side of the sword. There's so many, like, he's so big, it's taking us so long to paint him that, you know, I'm done on some parts, and some parts are just blocked in, and some parts are just still plastic. So yeah, we use what it is. He has a giant cape too that's all like dragon scales or metal scales, and so there's a lot to do on this model. I try not to like spend too much time on any one model, so he's progressing pretty slowly, but I still, every once in a while I pick him up. I felt like working on him today. So with the big monsters, it really takes so long to paint them that I don't want them to monopolize a stream. So it may take over a year to actually finish this guy. It probably, in fact, it almost definitely will, since there are times where I spend several weeks not working on him. So it'll be a long time to do him. But that does mean that, when I get to painting areas that are kind of repetitive, those of you who are new will actually be able to see me do it. Like, so those of you who are new to the stream didn't see how I did this. But when I paint the other side, then maybe you'll be able to see it without having to watch it, look it up on YouTube, which has a ton of videos on it, and sometimes it's hard to find stuff. Yeah, he has a little, just like up here where he's got kind of a little giant face here, he has a frowny giant face on his loincloth, which is kind of silly. But he is pretty cool. I think that is per the concept art. So yeah, so his cape on his back is like this, only it's huge. So we're going to probably do a pattern in the scales on the back of this giant once we get there. But yeah, I really like how he's coming out. Yes, giant pain. I try not to pun intentionally. David's allergic to it. That's why he sneezed. But yeah, so pretty good. Let me text Justin. No, they are not nice. He is really cool, but he is not nice. This is true. Let me zoom out. Let me focus so you guys can take a good look at him. And I'm going to text Justin because Justin is having to run the show through his phone. He had an appointment he had to do this morning. So let me give him a quick, hey, we are ready for a raid. Thank you guys for all tuning in this morning. It's been a really fun stream. Thank you all for also tuning into my personal streams this week for the D&D game. I always have such a blast, like, creating stuff with you guys for the world, so. Yeah, he's pretty cool. I mean, he's neat. His back is pretty bland just because his cape slots in up here. So we haven't done a lot of the metallic spec here, and I have to still base coat this other arm guard like I did this one since I figured out, how I was going to do it. Here it is, at my end of the world, it's 11 a.m. At Reaper, it's 1 p.m. So all my streams are kind of advertised in Reaper time. Yeah, I'm gonna do a lot of writing this weekend, and I'm gonna try to catch up on my World Anvil for the D&D game, guys. Thank you for coming in, Couple Cosplay. Now that I know who you are and who your husband is, it's super that you like my stream. I'm really happy about it. So yeah, I'm totally chill. Oh, there we go. We're rating Sky Daddy. Okay, so Sky is a really awesome body painter, and she's super positive and fantastic, and you guys should all go and make her happy, because I love Sky. Thank you all. I will see you Monday, okay? Okay, have a fun weekend. Bye, everybody.